lights up and mounting everything. This week we're going to go over the components and the functions of the blind, and next week we'll actually get into the shortening of the mini blind and getting it to their exact height. So for today, your learning objective is to be able to identify and 100% of the components and functions of the blind. So that's what we're focusing on today, and we need to be sure we know exactly what the blind is made of, where to cut, where to not cut, and what everything in the blind does. So the first thing we'll talk about is the slats, and I have one here. This is from a window that I took a slat out of the other day to show you guys exactly what it was. And one we'll be working with is going to be a vinyl blind, just like this one, 1-inch vinyl blind. And ours that we're going to shorten is a little bit smaller than this window, but you get the picture here. There's 2 holes on either end, just like the one we're going to be working on. And these are called the route holes. This is where the lift cord will go all the way down through each one of these slats. So most of these blinds come standard 64 inches long, which most people don't have windows that long. That's why we're shortening them. But so that lift cord will go through each one of these 64 times on each side. So it's got to go from the headrail to the bottom rail, and these holes are what helps it guide it through all the way down to the bottom rail. So these can be vinyl, they can be wood. I'm sure there's other types of materials that these slats are made out of, but most of the blinds you'll see today are vinyl. The next thing we'll talk about is ladder cords. The ladder cord is what holds those slats. It holds them nice and straight so that they don't get all cattywampus and unorganized. The ladder cord is what makes the blinds go tilt forward or backwards, up or down. So the ladder cord its main function is controlling the light that's filtering in through the blind in the window. The ladder blinds connected from the headrail to the bottom rail, and each ladder, it looks just like a ladder. Each ladder has 1 slat inside of it. So when we go to remove those slats, we're going to pull out one at a time. Not going to be able to do multiple because that's going to get everything tangled up. But we need to remember that it only holds 1 slat per ladder. The next thing we'll talk about is the lift cord. And like I said earlier, these slats have route holes that hold and guide the lift cord from the headrail to the bottom rail. The lift cord is very important to the functions of the blind because it's what makes the blind go up or down. So it's very important that you know that you can't just grab your scissors and start cutting away. And if you do that, you're going to mess up the blind, you're going to mess up the functions of the blind, you're probably going to have to throw it away. I did one a few weeks ago, didn't realize it was a cordless blind. I thought that we just hadn't got the wand attached, and I let it all the way out and pulled the bottom rail and all that stuff, and I ruined the blind, had to throw it away because there was nothing I could do to save it. So you really need to pay attention to what you're cutting and really double think everything and recheck what you want to do. The next thing we're going to talk about is the bottom rail. So I like to think of the bottom and the head rail, which we'll discuss next, as the frame of the window blind. The bottom rail is that hard piece of plastic at the bottom that, is the last thing to go up and it's the last thing to come down. And it holds the ladder cord and the lift cord. There's holes in the bottom and there's holes in the top. The ladder cords are shoved into those holes in the top, and the lift cord is threaded through, which you can use needle nose pliers. Right now I just have tweezers, and we'll use those tweezers to thread that lift cord through those holes in that bottom rail. We'll tie a knot, make sure that bottom rail stays snug and doesn't just fall off. So there's 3 plugs, there's 3 holes in the bottom of the rail, and then there's plugs that we're going to take out and put in so that we can get it disconnected and reconnected to the actual blind. Lastly, we're going to talk about the head rail. The head rail is the very top of the blind, and it's what we put into the brackets. It's what we use to mount it, essentially. And inside that head rail is all the mechanisms and the cords and the nuts and bolts of everything to run the lift cord and to run that ladder cord. So there's a wand, as I'm sure you've all seen, and you twist that wand. There's a mechanism in there that adjusts the ladder cord to filter more or less light into the room. There's a mechanism in there with the lift cord connected to the lift cord that when you pull that lift cord, it's going to lift the bottom rail up to the top, to the head rail, or halfway through the window, however you want to do it. So like I said, very, very important not to go in with some scissors and start chopping away just because you know what length you want your window blind to be. And it's also very important not to pull more than one slat out of the window at a time. So next week we'll go over the demonstration and we'll practice on how to shorten the blind and how to do it correctly without chopping it all to pieces and messing anything up. So make sure you study your information, and we will go over the demonstration next week.